the state of what we used to call art house cinema, especially in Romania, is not very good, to be polite. Other people would say that cinema is dead altogether. And this is connected in part with the lack of cinemas. It is connected more with the lack of cinemas for a period of some, 25 years. Because together with losing the cinemas, we lost generations of people who didn't watch any kind of cinema, didn't watch any kind of film in a theater, and who lost completely the habit of, this social habit of getting out and watching a film with others. And this is, from the beginning, very, very difficult to change and to improve. On top of this, we had this pandemic period, but I wouldn't say that the pandemic period was necessarily, it was like, if you want, the last drop, but this tendency was already present. And it was present because if you have children that start watching very fast American films from the age of 3, and they do this until the age of 16 or even 17 when they choose their own films, it's going to be very, very difficult to bring them back to any kind of cinematic rhythm. And therefore, they are trained from the beginning, they are educated to be the audience of the future very fast rhythm of American mainstream cinema. It's not even only about American cinema, because if you try to screen a narrative American film, they won't come. So it's just it's the language of mainstream. We know this is the situation. It's not much to comment about this. The situation of the spectators coming to watch what used to be called art house films has the same tendency pretty much everywhere in the world, but of course in a country with less means like Romania, you can see it more obviously than, for example, in France. There are some things that could be done, but to be honest, we need to tackle the situation from both directions. So one direction is to try to see if it's possible to multiply the number of theaters and to invest a little bit into the education of younger spectators, hoping that they will, from them you will find a sort of a niche that will continue coming, watching these films. But on the other way, it's important to make sure that the filmmakers themselves are sure that the films that they do address an audience. Because this is also important to say that sometimes we have the tendency in a lot of Eastern European and European countries actually of investing more into the production of films than into making sure that these films have an audience. So my feeling is that we produce a little bit too much and we have too little an audience for what we produce. Festivals in Romania serve as a way of exploiting these titles. They are a substitute to a kind of short, very small exploitation of titles that otherwise wouldn't come on screen at all, because as Stefan has explained, commercially these films are not viable, and actually nothing is viable in terms of a real business in cinema in Romania. Even a cinema like yours couldn't survive if it wouldn't be if it isn't the cultural institute behind to back it up. A distributor couldn't survive unless it gets this kind of subsidy from the media fund. Nothing could survive. And because culture cannot survive unless there is somebody backing it up. It's just that in Romania there is no, not that there is no interest, but nobody really invests into supporting anything in this chain of culture, which is the art house cinema. And actually what we do with these festivals, we try to give a chance to titles which are way less attractive than these two titles that he mentioned, when you say the Triangle of Sadness and even After Sun, these are like the mainstream of art house cinema. But you have way smaller titles, films which are not in English, films which are documentaries, or even films which come from South America or Asia, and they don't have any kind of support from European Union. So festivals are the only way of showing these films, and they will put together, I don't know, like 1,000 spectators in the number of shows here, and that's the whole exploitation that you can have with these titles. And because of this, it is crucial for us that we continue working with these potentially 7 theaters that Stefan mentioned, because our idea of exploiting such art house cinema was to regionalize the festivals that we started in Bucharest and to organize screenings in regional festivals happening at the same time as a way of, I don't know, exploitation for these titles. As you were saying, even if one of these 4 theaters in Bucharest collapses, the pressure on your theater and on the others would be even greater, because of course, besides screening these films in festivals, you want to have some sort of theatrical exploitation afterwards. And even if the model now is to show 7 films at the same time, of course you don't have enough slots for as many films as are being brought in Romania by the distributors. But I think that what we have discussed so far regards the efforts that we all make, and I mean people who are here on the stage right now, of dealing with the present situation, and we all do our best to manage somehow to keep alive this small flame of art house cinemas and the existing audience. But the question is, if there isn't an alternative to this, and the alternative, as it was already said, means that if the authorities of the state would be a bit more interested in culture, it wouldn't be this complicated to change things. But actually they are not. We have to say this, and we have to say that when I was invited for this conversation, I asked if it's possible to also invite somebody from, I don't know, the Bucharest mayor's office, the mayor or somebody else, or the Ministry of Culture, or somebody from the Ministry of Culture. Yes, I know, he's there, I've seen him. Because we can continue having this conversation as we did in the last 20 years in every other festival, but nothing will ever change unless you manage to create some sort of, I don't know, pressure on these people, and to see some measures coming from these authorities, because they involved a lot of financial implications, to use this kind of wording. In Bucharest, for example, we lost a lot of theaters in the last 30 years. Even if we had a couple of theaters on top, it would make a big difference to start with. But we haven't seen any mayor refurbishing any theater in the last 30 years. We lost a lot of them, a lot of, I don't know if you want objective causes, but actually the only theater which underpassed a process of refurbishing was Elvire Popesco, because it doesn't belong to the Romanian state. So I think that the effort that we would need to make is to see if it's possible to pressure these decision makers, even if cinema is not popular enough to bring enough votes, to maybe invest a little bit more into this process of refurbishing some theaters, because they belong to them by law anyhow, so it wouldn't be this difficult. And on the other side, what the Minister of Culture and the CNC could do is to invest in supporting these, the programming of these theaters, and supporting the distribution of films altogether, because for now we have the same tendency that we see present everywhere in Europe, but here in Romania is even stronger, to invest a lot into the production of the films, but nothing into the distribution of the films. Of course, the life of the film starts once you produce them, but somehow we just invest to produce them, and then we don't really care if anybody watches them or not. And we end up by having this kind of huge individual efforts coming from every other distributor, every other producer or director, to try to organize private screenings to bring a little bit of an audience for these films.